Good evening. My name is Julie Hicks. I'm the director of the alternative programs for ROE 53. I am the director over the Regional Safe School program and the Truant's Alternative and Optional Education program. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about when bad kids go good and the neuroscience behind it. I'd like to start by introducing you to James. James is a 16-year-old sophomore and he currently attends the Regional Safe School. The Regional Safe School is a program designed for kids who have been expelled from their home schools or have received multiple suspensions and have been sent to this school. In other words, it's where the bad kids go to school at. James, well, let me just show you. So this is James's discipline record from the first semester of his freshman year at high school. Yeah. James has been in trouble for all sorts of things. He's been in trouble for insubordination, refusing to do work, leaving class without permission, various mischievous behaviors like inappropriate hand gestures at students while they're giving presentations in class, taking pictures of students without their permission, and the list goes on and on and on. He had received about 8 detentions in about 4 months and 2 out-of-school suspensions. Prior to that, starting in about the 6th grade, James had received several different interventions, including time with the school social worker, time with the school counselor, behavioral interventions with the principal, and all sorts of academic interventions by multiple teachers. James's final straw in the traditional educational system was when he got in trouble for bringing drugs to school, and his only option, in addition to the fact that he had not passed any of his classes in high school, was to go on to the Regional Safe School. So James has now been at the Regional Safe School for 2 semesters. In the spring, he was able to salvage his grades and earn 2.75 credits towards graduation. Currently, James's lowest grade is a very high C. He's passing all of his classes. Oh, let me show you his discipline record for the last 2 semesters. This is it. I think he said a cuss word in class, maybe, on accident. So it seems James is a bad kid who's gone good. But why? I've talked to James and I've wondered, what changed? You were a bad kid before, now you come to my school and you're a good kid. Why? James tells me nothing changed in his life at home. Everything's the same. Lives in the same house, lives with the same people, does the same things, enjoys the same things. So that doesn't really explain it. As far as I'm aware, there's nobody that stands at the front door of the safe school with a magic wand that waves it and takes away all of the issues that students have at their previous schools, thereby making it easy for them to function highly at our school. That would be nice, but... So magic doesn't explain it. So that leaves me with one explanation. It has to be that there's something about the manner in which the day is conducted at the safe school that is just much more conducive to the needs that James and countless other students like him have. But how is it different? What is the explanation for this change? So, as I often do, if I have a problem and I'm looking for a solution, I always go straight to my students. I ask them, what is so different in your behaviors, your grades, your attendance, your general attitudes since coming to the safe school than when you were at your home schools? They gave me 3 distinct reasons, and they explained why they were suddenly good in school. They had no idea at the time, but they actually made some pretty brilliant neuroscientific observations in their responses. It just so happened that James offered up the first explanation. He said, it's the relationships. It's the relationships that I have with the teachers. They make me want to do my work. They make me want to do well. I want to do well for them. So James is kind of a man of few words, so he wasn't really able to elaborate any more than that. But I noticed the other students all agreed with him. Okay, so I'm responsible for discipline. I know for a fact that the students do not always want to please all of the teachers. So there had to be more. So I was trying to figure out what it was that they were trying to express. So then when I think about how our brains function and develop, the notion that relationships are essential for success, it makes perfect sense. See, our brains are wired to connect with people. When we connect with others, our emotions are active and primary. We share experiences, we empathize with fellow beings. Excuse me, interestingly, the responses that the neural pathways in our brains have to empathy are the same as when we learn. So in essence, the activity in James's brain, he's connecting with a teacher, say through conversation about their commonalities or their differences or whatever is interesting to them at that day, is the same as when he's learning and applying an algebraic equation, if you will. The same neurobiological functions that support our social interactions and relationships are also used for the basic decision-making that underlies most of our daily thought. In essence, James has a desire to connect with his teachers because it feels good. So by default, James has a desire to learn because it also feels good. As Dr. Jill Bolte-Taylor explains, although many of us may think of ourselves as thinking creatures that feel, biologically, we are feeling creatures that think. Okay, so another student explained another option to me. She said, the reason why I'm so successful at the Safe School is because I'm taught the way that I need to be taught. In other words, she doesn't have to have the same learning strategies as the student sitting next to her. See, at the Safe School, we operate under this fairness concept. That doesn't mean everybody has the same thing. When everything is fair, it means everyone has what they need. And so we try to make sure that every student in the building has what they need. Okay, on the surface, the Safe School program operates just like every other high school. There's traditional classes, classrooms, passing periods, bells, tests, books, homework and grades, teachers, all of those things. But there's also lots of differences. For the biggest difference is that we have very few teachers. Because we have so few teachers, our students are able to spend a lot of time with their teachers. Teachers and students don't always like this, but one student might have the same teacher for 2 to 3 times throughout the day. In some ways, we operate like an old-fashioned one-room schoolhouse. We're able to build relationships and work very closely with each other. This provides more time for students and teachers to get to know each other. So the other thing that's often different about the Safe School that maybe most traditional schools don't have is at any given time, a new student can come into the building. So let's say Sally comes in and she's now joined the geometry class. Sally's geometry class at her old school is probably going to be different than John's geometry class. They also, let's say, are on different performance levels within the subject of geometry. Now they're in the same class together. So each of them has different base of previous knowledge and experience, as well as academic ability. The teacher, though, is expected to teach them the same subject. She is expected to get them all the same math credit. In order to do this, she has to modify her lectures, assignments, evaluative tools to address all of the levels within the same class period. By doing so, she's actually increasing the learning for all of the students. She's providing multiple opportunities for knowledge acquisition and individualized instruction. Each student feels that the class has been designed for them. They learn differently, they have different experiences, likes, dislikes, and brain functioning. We are all different. No two of us are the same. So when a teacher is able to meet the needs of each student individually, she's able to build their confidence and create a positive learning environment. This then increases the student's motivation to learn and be successful both inside and outside of the classroom. All right, so the final explanation that the students gave me, well, it wasn't nearly as insightful. It was actually pretty simple. They said, well, we just like it better here. And while that made my heart warm, as it did my staff, it didn't really give me a lot of insight into what I was actually looking for. So I did some questioning, and I asked them, What is it that makes you feel differently when you come to the safe school? How do you feel differently walking through these doors? Okay, we've already established that most of these students were difficult to handle at their previous schools. Unfortunately, as educators, we sometimes fall into this cycle of anticipation and tradition. We all know who the bad kids are. We anticipate that those kids are going to come into our classroom and they're going to behave just the same as they did for the teachers and the administrators who came before us. It's tradition. That's the way that it happens. As a result, we as educators are on a heightened alert. We then set ourselves up for a continuous self-fulfilling prophecy. Of course they were bad in my classroom. They were bad in every classroom. This puts most of my students are this way. This puts them at risk for something that we call school wounds. They basically have been hurt by going to school. It sets them up for a cycle, just like we set ourselves up to be the teachers in front of them to deal with their behaviors. So basically, when this happens, a student's brain responds to this cycle just as it has had a traumatic event. It can manifest as all of the things that, say, James, for instance, has gotten in trouble for. Acting out behaviorally in class, to participate, refusing to do his homework, simply leaving the classroom. These are basic survival responses. When we feel threatened, when we feel danger, we do one of three things. We want to fight, act out behaviorally. We want to flee, leave the classroom without permission, or we freeze. I'm not doing that. I don't hear you giving me that assignment. The cycle is often endless. And from the moment that a student, sometime an educator, thinks about going into the building, the brain activity that's related to these, it begins. Okay, so by default, by coming to the safe school, the cycle stops. It's broken. The sheer fact that a student is going to a new building interrupts the cycle, and it allows us to make new patterns in their brain waves and their brain activities. Teachers and other students at the safe school aren't told of the laundry list of offenses that students have when coming to the school. In fact, everyone gets a new start. It's an environment that is focused on challenge and learning. So you might be thinking, well, yeah, they get a new start, but you have all those kids, all that kind of kid. So you surely have lower expectations. You just don't expect as much as them as they do at the traditional school. Actually, it's funny because it's actually quite the opposite. Our students are held to a very high level of behavioral, social, and for the first time in many of their lives, academic standard. It's explained to them that they are given enough support to reach these goals and that we expect that we will all meet them together. So how is it possible that these students who weren't meeting these very low expectations that they had in their previous schools now come to the safe school and automatically reach these high expectations right away? Neuroscience provides an explanation. Our brains thrive when they're challenged with a problem or a puzzle. New neural connections are made and learning happens. Now, in order for this to happen effectively, especially with the students that we work with in our programs, teachers must create an environment in which it's safe to fail. In other words, we can't expect students to learn to problem solve if we're critical when the problem isn't solved right away, or when they go about doing it in a way that we maybe wouldn't have necessarily preferred that they do it. Students have to know that it's acceptable for them to try new solutions, even if it's unconventional. Our classrooms need to be a safe place for students to experiment socially and emotionally as well. They need to be able to problem solve in all three arenas. We also know that boredom increases stress, which leads to feelings of hopelessness for students. So we need to keep them engaged, exposed to new ideas, and interested in what we are teaching. By decreasing stress, negative behaviors decrease and positive attitudes increase. Students at the safe school are comfortable raising their hands to answer questions, going up to the board to solve a problem, reading out loud in front of their peers, standing before a group and giving a presentation, all things that they never would have dreamed of doing at their previous schools. I have to believe that this is because they are now in an environment that is safe and welcoming, and they are accepted even if they don't succeed. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up with here's what the bad kids have taught me. In order to be an effective and successful educator, let's say to increase my student growth data, I need to get to know them. I need to build true relationships with them and connect with them not only through teaching, but also as fellow human beings. I need to set high standards for them and provide the support to them to be able to reach them, including during times when they fail. I need to treat them as individuals, and I need to treat them as the individuals that they are. I need to look past their colorful pasts and records and provide them with a blank canvas to write a new script. I need to be interesting. I need to engage them at times, even if it's about topics or times that I really have no interest in or I'm even maybe not comfortable with. I have to accept that I might learn something from them. I need to make my classroom and school feel like their home. Okay, imagine this. If you make your classroom a student's home, you could possibly never have a bad kid in your classroom again. If you make your classroom a home, after all, we know all of the good kids always go home. Thank you.